This is the GPL podcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
Oh boy. Jupe making mistakes. I love it. Okay, we got to complete the saying question. Duck, duck.
Goose.
Oh!
It ain't Greyduck, it's Goose.
So, Sam, I think you might have gotten kicked out of a game, maybe?
Yeah.
For being a dirty player? You know, Toe Blake, Eddie Shore?
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 298. Happy New Year, Vigs.
Happy New Year to you as well. It was a very eventful winter break around here with the World Juniors coming to town. I was really hoping I would get a USA gold medal game for my birthday like I have the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we didn't get one this year.
Well, we'll get into that in a bit, but really, we kind of knew this was going to be a down year for talent. I mean, there were questions kind of all over. I mean, we had some good stars in there, but you need more than a couple stars. You need some good injuries, but a goaltending was a question the whole time. Plus, maybe some of the choices Bob made and some of the goaltending as well. But it was interesting. It was very interesting. So,
for sure, down year, injuries played a big role. Arguably, their top forward, Plant, getting injured and missing games really impacted, I think, their line combinations of their top six and their special teams. And then Cole Hudson, if there was probably one player on their roster this year that was irreplaceable, it was Cole Hudson. He was such a dynamic player. He was +5 in their first game. He gets back in the quarterfinal right away, scores a goal, gets an assist, looked super confident out there. Definitely a game changer for USA Hockey. Most points by a defenseman ever in the World Juniors for USA, and they just couldn't replace him.
They couldn't. And then, like I said, you had the question in goalie. Who do they go with? A lot of people thought, they should go this way, they should go that way. And then all of a sudden he plays the third goalie out of nowhere for Sweden. A lot of people were questioning the goalie choice. They were.
I almost feel like there had to be word from on high that Nowling had to get a game. He's going to be at BU next year. He's a development team goalie. He can come back for the World Junior next year, probably the favorite to take the net. Throwing him into the deep end against Sweden, who I thought was the best team in the tournament. As we closed out our pods from Grand Casino, I picked the Swedes to win it. They were hands down, in my mind, the best puck possession team of anyone in the tournament. They made the least mistakes with the puck, and their power play was nearly as dangerous as Canada's.
And I initially thought I thought we were going to see a Canada-US bronze medal and a Finland-Sweden final. Probably would have made a better final, Vigs, even though Czechia did come back in the last minute and a half and got within one real quick. But I thought Finland was also very good. They just couldn't score the shootout against Sweden. And their goalie was amazing in that game. So, Finland ends up, taking fourth, but they were this close to being right there.
Finland was very impressive. Rimpinen, the goalie for Finland, looked very good against the USA. Other than that first shot that just eluded him in the Sweden game, I thought he played pretty well throughout the rest of that contest, and then was great in the overtime for Finland to even get them to the shootout.
And Finland has shown year after year that if you let them hang around within a goal, even though it doesn't look like threatening, they will make you pay for it.
Yeah.
The U.S. certainly found that out.
Finland, for being such a small hockey nation, does a great job turning out competitive teams. The model that they have for development over there is really impressive, and I like this year's Finland team. And I was impressed with their character after the game against the U.S. They lost in the gold medal game a year ago to the U.S., And most of those players said it wasn't about revenge. It was a respectful game, and they understood that, they were lucky this time. They earned it. They earned their bounces and took advantage of it, but they were very respectful. And in a World Junior tournament where sometimes the respect isn't given by everyone, as we saw in Canada's exit and how they behaved, I think that's a lot of important character that the Finns bring to the game.
And we actually talked about that post that Finland lost, how good the goalie was on just saying, hey, we were fortunate this time, and he was pretty good about it. And then you said, contrast to the Canadians, and little different on their reaction.
Yeah, Mr. Gavin McKenna nearly missed the bronze medal game with his behavior. So it'll be interesting to see if other teams pick up on that the second half of the year and maybe get in his face here and there. I read an interesting note on GPL about Logan Cooley being almost taunted down the stretch. Because you knew that, the fuse could blow there and he could make a mistake. So it'll be interesting to see how McKenna has to handle that the rest of the year, if that's the scouting report.
So disappointing finish for the U.S. Crowd issues. Well, we've talked about that. No big deal. Still a successful tournament. And like we said, I'm not a politics talking guy, but it seems like politics really slowed down a lot of the Canadians to come down to Minnesota this time. I believe the next U.S. tournament is in 2031.
Yep, 2030 round 31. Sounded like Seattle might be a favorite to host that, close to Vancouver. Minneapolis, St. Paul was probably the first time the U.S. has hosted something that's not right close to the Canadian border. Buffalo and
Grand Forks too.
Grand Forks, right close to there. So a little bit different. NHL venues are tough. I think we saw the World Juniors in Ottawa struggle to sell out games there. They even had a big, I think, USA-Canada final, and they weren't able to quite sell out the building. When IIHF wants to set these ticket prices the way they do and handle it and, really make it a tough market, not really make it clear that if you bought a full package to both pools, you wouldn't be able to see all the games anyway. So some challenges there.
So, yeah, this is on them, too. Those prices were extremely high, Vigs. Sorry, the fans that are watching this, well, at least a lot of them are blue-collar fans, Vigs. They're not. I mean, somebody priced out, like, I think it was made up in Twitter or GPL or something. I said it would have cost them $16,000 to have a family of 4 do the full package. What are they doing?
Pretty crazy.
Well, so still successful. It was nice to see Sweden get their second overall title. That's amazing.
Yeah, first in a long time for them. They've had a lot of success in the preliminaries, but they have really struggled in gold medal games over the years.
Well, before we get to the second part of the season, Vigs, we did have one series after that Denver game in December where Minnesota went out to Ohio State and got a split. I don't remember it all that well.
A long time ago.
It was a long time. Okay, so a 6-3 win, a 6-5 loss. You were just talking before the show, and boy, they were out attempted something ridiculous to 28 or something like that, 60 something to 28.
It was like 80. 80 to 28 attempts. And I mean, I can't remember a lot of Gopher teams that got outplayed like that in just terms of possession. But if you look at like the college hockey, it was 87 shot attempts by Ohio State in that game to just 28 from Minnesota. And, the Gophers still got 5 goals with some great playmaking. But if you look at the advanced stats for both games, Ohio State generated more quality chances than Minnesota. Just the Gophers were able to finish.
So, okay finish on the first half. That Denver win just the week before is probably a pretty good high. What's your assessment of the first half so far? I know Bob talked a lot about it this afternoon. I say, hey, we were pretty bad at first, but he really liked November, December. But how did you kind of see it?
I think the struggles on the penalty kill really blew up the mistakes that this team and the shortcomings this team had throughout the first half. Their penalty kill is one of the worst in college hockey right now. And I think that's something that they're going to have to address. One, from a goaltending standpoint, they need their goalies to make probably another save a game. If you look at the Wild, the way they started their season, their goalies weren't playing very well, and they just needed that extra save a game to give them a chance. And I don't think Minnesota got that very often in the first half. And their penalty kill, I've been hard on Brody Lamb specifically on the penalty kill, and he owned up to it today in media. He said, yeah, we need to be more consistent on the kill. Yeah, we've had some miscommunications among forwards with switches at the top of the zone. That has to be better. And so you got to appreciate a player saying, yep, I know what we need to fix, and we're going to work on it. So I think those two things are key for me.
And we're going to take a look at some of those stats in our second segment here, just to see where Minnesota is and how they stack up with the best and the worst of the NCAA right now. So I've been doing a lot of nerd work these last couple of weeks, Vigs, a lot of back end stats, trying to get them all collected and on GPL. So we'll take a look at some of that in our second segment. So team isn't where they want to be. They're like number 2 in the NLI. I almost said NIL there. Not where they want to be. I noticed there was a lot of talk today at the media availability. Says, do you want to be like Penn State was last year? Penn State was kind of in last place, and they really moved up. And yeah, obviously they want to do that, but this is a different team than that Penn State team.
Very different team. And I think Minnesota is counting on their young players to come through, but I think they're also counting on some of their veterans to be more consistent. I think they need their Brody Lambs and their Leo Grubas and their Jimmy Clarks to have a little bit better production and consistency in the second half. If you also look at this team, down the middle, not very deep. I don't think center has been a strength of this team so far this year. It needs to be more consistent, and they need to stay healthy. And I think Tanner Ludke is an important player for this team, and losing him to injury didn't help. Eric Paulson definitely had a first half to forget and come back here in the second half and be better. Mason Moe, I think, has been a bright spot for the Gophers at center. I think he really emerged as someone they can rely on here in the second half, someone who might get elevated at times. And, of course, LJ Mooney has looked great in the faceoff circle at times for Minnesota. He got a lot of key opportunities for USA and the World Junior, and they're going to need him to play like that here in the second half.
All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good assessment of the first half of the season. Obviously a good high of winning at North Dakota 5-1 and winning at Denver in overtime. Those are the positives for me. Obviously things here and there, but injuries, they're always an issue. So you take the good with the bad, Vigs.
Yeah, I think injuries, inconsistency, losing to Minnesota, Duluth, and Wisconsin the way they did, 2 tough weekends. And with so many home games on the Gophers schedule, that's impacted their rankings in the MPI so far. So they have a big opportunity ahead in the second half.
All right. Well, before we move on, Vigs, we have a brand new sponsor, don't we? And it's something I never thought we'd have, but we found out earlier this week we've got a new sponsor, and it's Cascade CBX Sport CBD for the athletes. Is that pretty much what we've got here, isn't it?
Yeah, CBD's kind of gotten lumped in with THC. That's not what it is. CBD it's got a lot of properties that athletes can rely on. It can knock out pain. It can reduce inflammation. It can help you sleep better. And Cascade CBX Sport is providing those benefits, and it's certified for sport with NSF. So it's something you can take for pain, help you relax and have less stress. And it's something where it's not going to impact you as an athlete. So check out Cascade, bxsport.com, and trust the shield to stay on the field.
It's going to be an interesting new sponsor there, Vigs. I was just talking earlier, maybe we're going to get a sample. We're kind of looking forward to getting some of these samples and trying them, because I've got a bum knee. I want to try some of that out. And you were just on the ice for 3 hours tonight. You've got to be sore too.
Yeah, we had our skills night for my hockey association tonight. So we had 3 hours back to back. So I've got some aches and pains that maybe a little CBD would help me relax and come down from that long ED at Northeast Ice Arena.
So we welcomed Cascade CBX Sport as a new sponsor on the GPO podcast. Let's take a look at your top 20 this week, Vigs. Oh, we get a little better screen than that. Michigan takes over the top spot. I know you've been a little hesitant putting them up there so far because Wisconsin have played so well, but Wisconsin tumbled a bit this week.
Yeah, Wisconsin fell to Western Michigan in their little holiday tournament. It's always kind of weird, these tournaments during the break when teams are missing players and haven't practiced together and they've given some time off. But at the same time, Michigan's been really good this first half. I'm really looking at how they're going to play in the second half of the Big Ten when they have to play at a high level every single week. Brandon Naurato has done a great job generating offense, but consistency and discipline are two things the Wolverines haven't always had. Maybe they have enough talent this year to overcome that. And they definitely have a great record in the first half. Lots of offense for the Wolverines this year.
Mm-hmm. Michigan State, Western Michigan, seems to be a Michigan theme going on here. And it's been a theme kind of all season long.
Yeah, this whole top 6 of the top 20 the last couple of weeks, pretty consistent. I definitely think that these teams are the cream of the crop right now in college hockey. And then after that, it's a big mix. There's a lot of teams that have been inconsistent, have some strange losses on their resume so far, and it's hard to pick who's going to be in that next little group. It's going to be a real interesting bubble to watch this year with the NCAA tournament. MPI is new this year, and one of the things is it throws out some wins that hurt your RPI. Mm-hmm. Some of these teams play games where that's impacted them in the pairwise in the past. We kind of wonder how are some bad losses going to affect teams? Are they going to affect them less? We saw Dartmouth lose and they didn't quite drop as far as a lot of people were expecting. We're seeing a lot of ECAC teams still in the top 20 of the MPI. So it'll be real interesting to see how this shakes out as the year goes on.
And then you've got North Dakota and Duluth. They've had strong years. Penn State's been strong all year. But then you look around it a bit. You got Quinnipiac, Denver, and even Maine on there. I've been kind of up and down this season, strange losses. And you had Maine play Denver this weekend, and that was a pretty good series. But like you mentioned, it's kind of that inconsistency. You're not really sure where to put those teams.
Yeah, I was just talking with some coaches over break here, and they just noticed, there's almost 280 new players to college hockey this year.
Oh,
if you look at the CHL players and the U Sport players that have come into college hockey, it is not easy any weekend. So many teams have older, experienced players. I think it's hard for some of these flag bearers like BC and BU and other schools like that to maintain so much success. They're going to have bumps in the road.
Augustana, Raboyne is getting his team together. He's getting it together.
Yeah, they've had a couple good weeks. This could be the year where CCHA gets Augustana and Minnesota State both in the tournament, but they need those teams to really get hot and stay hot the rest of the way. They can't avoid the pitfalls of splitting weekends. Mm-hmm. And you look at their MPIs, both those schools are doing very well right now.
All in all, I think it's a pretty good list, Vigs. How long until, your typical USCHO voter starts looking at the NPI and kind of going off of that?
Yeah. It's always interesting. January? I was kind of looking at it, this poll, and I still don't quite see it. Dartmouth at 6, Cornell at 11, Princeton
North Dakota at 2.
Yeah,
not a bad selection. I mean, it's really
Harvard at 17, and you look at the schedules that those schools have played. I don't see it in the MPI rating, but I bet if I looked at some of the other power ratings, you'd see their schedules aren't very strong, and yet they're still in contention for bids despite it. So that's interesting to see.
Well, it comes back to just win, baby. It really does. Even if you're playing a weak schedule, if you're winning and not losing or not tying, it's still not a bad thing. We saw it with Penn State all those years, Vigs, when they played that weak non-conference schedule. Yeah, but they still won those games. That's still a big deal.
Yeah, the one commonality of all those teams is they only have like 4 or 5 losses. And you're looking at first half, that puts them in pretty good shape right now in the stats.
All right, one thing I wanted to look at that you just discussed earlier are the stats. And one of the big ones you talked about was the power play, penalty kill, and whatnot. I've been taking some of these stats up, and I'm not sure people can see that so well. If you're listening, sorry. Start watching our show, but we'll try to explain as much as possible. I'm grabbing all these stats. I'm like seeing how the U of M is doing nationally, and then we're showing who's number 1 and who's number 63, who's the best and worst. And right there, that second line, penalty kill, Vigs, they rank 62nd out of 63 teams. And that's just not acceptable, like Brody Lamb was saying earlier today.
Yeah, and it's a combination of the killers and the goaltending, and neither of them have been very good. We looked at this roster coming back. They lost a lot of their penalty killing players and a lot of guys who had experience there. And so they've been trying to figure out a formula for them to be successful. And I think when you pair a penalty kill that's struggling and centers who are struggling to win draws, that's a bad recipe. And then if you don't have the goalies who can make the saves, you get a penalty kill that's 64.2%. They've given up 19 goals so far on the kill. And you just can't win games when it's like that.
No, you can't. and you know what? But, some of that recently didn't matter because they weren't giving up penalties. If you look here towards, the third stat there, they're 44th at penalty minutes per game. That's where you want to be ranked really down the list. I mean, you compare it to Penn State, who's at almost 20 minutes a game of penalties compared to Minnesota's, 8.5. They had not very many penalties against Ohio State and Denver, so they couldn't really improve their penalty kill percentage because we did see the power play get better. They were in the 40s and 50s, and they're back up to they're number 15 now in the power play.
And I haven't been as worried about the power play as I have about the PK, because I feel like even though they've had games where they haven't scored, the power play has been pretty dangerous, and they've been getting chances, especially the last couple of games. LJ Mooney just seems to have more and more confidence on the power play, and he's finding ways to make an impact on the game. And I think some of his teammates are starting to figure out that they can get into spots and they're going to get the puck on the tape and be able to score goals. So I'm not as worried about the power play. I don't think it's your typical power play that's going to operate through, defensemen at the top. I think, operating through Mooney on the half wall is probably where they're going to have the most success. I think we're still waiting on Leo Gruba to make a bigger impact. I think Luke Middlestad's been very good for them, but he's not, a high-end talent. He's more of a hardworking guy who can win pucks and keep plays alive and make strong plays. But I don't think he's, a top of the NCAA type puck moving defenseman.
I've highlighted face-off win percentages right now, Vigs. 44.8%, 61st in the NCAA. That has got to change. And that's something they haven't been this bad the last couple of years, but we have been talking about face-offs and key face-offs, on the penalty kill, on the power play, late in the game, you're trying to prevent another team from scoring. You lose that face-off. Face-offs has been an issue for quite a few years now.
Yeah, it's curious, especially on the PK. I would love to see this broken out by face-offs to start a penalty kill, because it just feels like they've been struggling.
Or a power play.
There.
Or the power play start.
Power play hasn't been as bad. I think they've found some options on the power play where they've had some success and have gotten possession. But I just feel like on the PK, they have not found the recipe there yet. And typically, Mooney has been going out there in like a second or third PK pair. I feel like it's been on, Jimmy Clark and Brody Lamb quite a bit to start penalty kills, and they just need to have a little bit more success there. And I've talked to, Gophers in the past about, how can you be more effective on the PK? You're going to have one less player who's able to get to loose pucks after the drop. And I think you've got to be really aggressive in those first 5 seconds to try to get to those 50-50 pucks, when it's not one clean. And it just feels like they can't get there as easily.
So there you go. Penalty kill, face-offs. They're important, Vigs. They're good. They're really important. And right now, they're just not performing there. So
big opportunity in the second half, right?
Well, that's what we talked about during the World Juniors is, LJ Mooney and how he was out there a lot and he was winning a lot. I don't know what his percentage was. I wasn't keeping that close track, but it seems like he was doing fairly well on the penalty at the face-off dot.
Yeah, it seemed like they were picking his side for strong draws, and if it went to the other side, Stiga was getting them. Because you get to pick the side on the power play, and that's something where maybe the Gophers are going to have to start putting out 2 centers when they're on the kill to start potentially, so you get a strong guy on each side. We'll see how it shakes out in the second half.
I saved this question for earlier, but Greg here is wondering, is LJ Mooney a possible 1 and done or 2 and done? He's little. That tends to help, doesn't it?
It tends to help NHL teams let them simmer a little bit longer in college hockey when they're smaller. Now, I think Cole Caulfield was a 2 and done type player. Maybe.
But he was Hobie type material too.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't put it out of the possibility that Mooney someday could be a Hobie contender. Now, he's not there right now, but maybe someday he could be. But I think he's probably at least a 3-year player, just with that size. And he'll be fun to watch for 3 years if he sticks around.
Yes, we like to hear that. Definitely like to hear that. All right.
And the other thing about Mooney is it seems like he likes to be here. He is a player that just looks happy and comfortable. You can see some players, like, you just tell this is just a stop in the road and they're almost ready to move on.
He's seems not like his cousin, you're saying?
He seems very comfortable being here. So something to think about.
I would agree. Well, before we get into this week's big showdown with Penn State, you know what we got to talk about, Vigs? Cub foods. And I just know you've been using Cub foods this whole holidays, Christmas, New Year's, celebrations. They kept your house full.
That's right. I'm down at the Quarry Cub multiple times a week, getting the great produce there. Lots of options for meals. You always know that if you're looking for something, Cub's going to have it in stock. Just great variety, great selection, great staff there to help you. I really love Cub. If you look at what they've been doing with Dinkytown athletes, Cub is one of us. They've been supporting PJ Flex program, getting players to sign those contracts to come back with NIL deals. So, when you go to Cub, you're supporting Gophers, and they support our podcast just like they support PJ Flex headset. And, with the new year, maybe you're going sober and you're looking for some NA drinks. You can find that at Cub. They've got a lot of liquor stores. Maybe you're going California sober and you're turning over a new leaf. You can get some THC products. Or maybe you're going Buffalo sober and you're going to have beer and wine and maybe some of the lighter alcohols, but not all of them, like Steve Zahn says. Cub's got you there. And if you want great drinks, go to Cub as well. So check out Cub, shop happy.
All right. And of course, we thank Cub for being our sponsor this week. Penn State Vigs, they were in town not too long ago. We had a 3-2 Minnesota win that ended up with kind of a little scrum at the end of the game, which was very entertaining. And just that little video of Mooney just shoving the guy up against the boards. I think it had like 3,000 or 4,000 views on Instagram when I put that video. So that seemed good. And then they followed it up the next night with the 2-1 loss where I think they played well. And then all of a sudden, third period, it was 2-1. So not bad, but now they go to Unhappy Valley.
It's a place where Minnesota has struggled the last couple of years. The Nittany Lions have had the Gophers number for whatever reason in this series when the Gophers have gone out there. It's going to be a tough series. The Saturday game against Penn State really surprised me with how defensive Guy Gadowski's program played. It's probably the most structure I've seen out of their team. I think it was the least opportunities allowed. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of weekend we get between these two programs, because clearly a lot of talent with Penn State's roster this year. You talk to some of the Gophers, they make more plays than Penn State teams have tried to make in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's because they have an elevated talent level and they just are trusting them a little bit more. And so it'll be a real fun series to see what happens on the ice. The Gophers have a lot of questions to answer in this series in the second half.
I noticed, we're getting some guys back. I think I heard Motzko say that Paulson maybe next week, maybe the week after. How's the health looking right now?
Yeah, Leo Gruba was held out of the Bemidji exhibition. I think that's just precautionary. He's been nicked up a little bit in the first half. They just want to make sure he was ready in the second half. If you look at the Gopher roster, puck moving defenseman is not something they have a lot of. And so they needed him to be healthy. He practiced this week and looks fine. August Falloon is back on the ice, full contact, ready to go. He had an upper body injury that kept him off the ice for a little bit there. But Paulson is still, another week or two with his upper body injury.
Okay. Is it too late to add somebody, make the 26th guy? I mean, does school start a couple more weeks? I don't know what the rules are now. Of course, I don't think anyone knows the rules.
Well, you have to be enrolled to play. That you can't just add someone who's not enrolled and put them in the lineup. But I don't think the Gophers are going to be adding anybody at the break for that 26th spot. I think they kept that option for them if there was a major season-ending injury to someone key, and the player that you would be bringing in would get significant minutes. They don't have any significant injuries right now where that kind of playing time is there. So you would just be impacting the player you're bringing in and costing them development. The other spot would be a goaltender. If one of Airy or DePasquale got injured, you'd want to bring in another goalie as a safety option there. So that's why they did that. Minnesota, Boy Scout school, they play by the book. They're not going to cheat the rules and do weird things to game the system. So I think it's probably not going to happen. I think two obvious players that the Gophers could have added would have been Kvasnicka. He came to the World Junior Camp. Mm-hmm. He's had a very good first half for the WHL. He's not really a player that fits what they would need. I think they probably could use a center who's really good on faceoffs and maybe a little bit bigger. Kvasnicka is a winger, smaller guy, lots to compete, but I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And then Maceo Phillips, he's a big physical defenseman.
Yeah.
But he's not really a playmaking.
A lot of penalty minutes and quite a not the greatest negative plus minus right now either.
Yeah, and they just got to let those guys bake and be patient with them. I think Bob obviously is playing the long game, whether the fans like that or not. But there are answers on this roster that will have an opportunity to prove themselves.
And actually, that's a quick plug for our recruits page that you can find on GPL. We're keeping track of the stats of all the committed recruits there. And you can see what they're scoring, and obviously Carter Casey as well, and how he's doing in goal. So head over there to check that out. Our guy Max here, he's got a question. Viggs, think Gavin McKenna is rattled by the negative media buzz, or will he grow / learn from it?
We'll see how McKenna handles it. He's going to have to get used to it. I think the first half was definitely good for his growth as a player. Mm-hmm. He looked better with Canada than he's looked with Penn State. There is a lot of that perimeter play that he has in his game. And I think for him to be an effective player, he's going to have to be more engaged. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're tested from week to week. And he's certainly getting that in college hockey. If he had been in the WHL this season, I don't think he would have grown his game at all. He would just be on the perimeter, scoring power play points and taking advantage of younger players. Now it's going to be a challenge for him. And he's a known commodity. It'll be interesting to see if players get in his face in the second half after the way the World Juniors ended for him.
Steve wondering thoughts on how far the Gophers can move up in the NPI. Let me tell you, Steve, wins on the road are key.
Yeah, for sure. If we look at the MPI, road wins definitely help. There's more of a bonus this year for that. I think that is kind of against the Penn State scheduling, where you're basically buying teams to come to your building. MPI discourages that and encourages road wins. I think the Gophers probably lost some MPI status because that Denver game was a neutral site, not a true road game. So that didn't help the Gophers. And then, all the games they played at home, even the wins didn't help them as much it would be as if it was a road game. So I think these games at Happy Valley are huge here coming up, and those games at Michigan State are huge. If Minnesota can win at least one game in those series, it's going to help them a ton in MPI.
All right, pressure's on. What's your prediction for this weekend?
I think a split is what the Gophers are going to get. I think that's going to help them in the MPI. And, I get the feeling Bob's going to play both goalies this weekend, and one's going to deliver and one is going to have some question marks. And as far as the long-term outlook of this team, you want to figure out who that goalie is going to be. And so you're going to have to play them both, I think, here and see who rises to the top.
I think there's a caveat, though. If you win good and the goalie plays good Friday night, I think he goes against Saturday night to try to get the sweep.
Possibly true, but there's no easy games here to get the other guy back in. So if you get a nice shutout on Friday night against Penn State, maybe you do get the game on Saturday too. So
January is a murderer's row this month.
Oh man, it doesn't get any better. 4 top 10 teams here essentially for the Gophers.
Just win, baby. Just win. I'm going to pick 4 out of 6 points for the Gophers. I'm trying to bring back some little more positivity after some of my negativity earlier this year. So 4 out of 6.
Over under on goals for games this weekend. Are we going to see a game that's more like the Friday or the first game or the second game?
I think they're both, 6 and under, 3-2 type of games, 2-1, 3-1 type of games.
I think I would go over 6.5 on Friday and under 6.5 on Saturday.
I think if it goes over, that means the Gophers aren't scoring and the other team is.
I think one of the things we've seen in college hockey this first half is some of those first games of a series, the discipline isn't quite there. So, they figure it out the next night. I was just going to look at the odds for this weekend.
Oh boy.
And the over-under
families.
The over-under is 6.5. And the over is -135. So it's going with what we were just saying there. Penn State.
Well, Molesky would say, get the hammer, take the over. And then, what was it? 2 goals were scored.
Yeah.
Oh boy. But one note, both games are on Big Ten Network this weekend, Vigs. Both 5 p.m. games local. I like that. Early night, and then you can actually go out afterwards. Go have some dinner. Have a late dinner. Go out and enjoy the weekend.
You could. I'm going to be going to Bob Motzko's hometown of Austin this weekend for a hockey tournament.
Really?
So my Pee Wee team has a 9:00 game on Friday night. So,
well, that's not so bad. You'll be done with your Gophers long before then.
Yeah, I'll be able to listen to Wally and his dulcet tones on the road on the way down to Austin. And
with Pat Micheletti. Pat is getting back on the road from what I heard. So good.
That is awesome to hear.
And he's going to be on our 300th episode coming up in 2 weeks.
Special time for that. Nursing home post meal podcast. Just kidding, Pat. Just kidding. But we'll go early for that night. We'll go early. Yeah. I'll do that for Pat. He's a legend.
We got Nick Angel next week before Michigan. We've got obviously Todd Molesky coming up for Wisconsin at the end of the month. So it's going to be a busy month, Felix. It's going to be a busy month, big game. So I'm looking forward to it.
A lot of question marks right now.
Oh, don't I know. I know.
All you gotta do though is win. All you gotta do though is win.
Just win, baby. Just win. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast. Like I said, we'll have Nick Angel on next week to preview the Michigan series, and that'll be fun to get Nick back on. I know he's excited about it. For those of you watching live, keep watching for a short overtime this week. For the rest of you, we'll catch you next week on the GPL podcast. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and get notified each time we go live or post a video. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate our show and leave a review. For those of you watching live, you know what's next. It's Vigo's Beverage of the Week. It's time for overtime. That's a great sounder, but why they say we are Minnesota instead of just doing the Rouser? That's goofy.
Probably some licensing issues. And with we are Penn State, coming together here. Bell's Expedition Stout.
How much bread is in that? Wow.
This is a 2021 Expedition Stout. It's one of those stouts. It's a 12-ounce bottle. Easy to get access to. Delicious, big stout.
How about that? That's nice. That's
5 years is perfect aging for this. It is delicious and smooth. It's not bitter at all. Love it. Really good.
All right. How was the World Juniors, really, Viggs? Who is the coolest person you met?
Coolest person I met. I mean, it was great to see Chris Peters there. He is Mr. World Juniors. And to get, a little combo with him about honest off the record, what he's thinking about Team USA and the tournament as a whole. That was a fun little moment to see that. But I think also just seeing the foreign teams in the mix zone and just their energy and how they acted and hearing the different coaches speaking in their languages to their local medias and things like that. And just the mix zone is a different experience than your usual press conference. NCAA tournament, you usually get to go in the locker room and get guys that way, which is a different thing too. But, the IIHF mix zone is its own animal.
Okay.
I'm sure LJ and Brody were sick of me asking for them after every game, but that was one of the reasons I was there, though, is to see how they were doing in the experience. Mm-hmm. So it was fun to be there.
It would have been nice if the team would have gotten a little further, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. And, as much as people were on Motzko after the tournament, this is a players' tournament and it's an age group tournament. And this age group has struggled at the world championship level. When you just specifically look at this young birth year, they have not done very well. And if you look at the defensemen that maybe they could have brought to the tournament, I don't think they would have been difference makers. You could argue that Jacob Rombach maybe should have deserved a chance to play on this roster. Logan Hensler did not look very good for the U.S. on defense. Kleber, he had too much to do when he wasn't playing with Cole Hudson and didn't look very, very good out there. And I think that was something that hurt the U.S. team quite a bit in the tournament.
Was it you that told me that was it Reed that's going to Michigan State and he's not going for another until 27 or something like that?
No, he's draft eligible for this next year.
Yeah.
And it would make sense if he waited another year. He's a draft eligible this year. It's sometimes a rare thing for
I
them.
had heard somewhere
go.
that he's not going to go in for 26, 27. He might go in 28 or 27, 28 to Michigan State. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, he's on
He's
CHN.
good.
He's slotted for 2027.
That's why he could be on a roster right now.
Well, right now, Michigan State has 5D committed for next year already. So he'd be their 6D coming in. So I think that's probably part of the issue. And on their roster, they have 2, 4, 6. No.
Hey, Bob, we have some openings. Let's sneak it. Hey, wants to come in early? I think that might be a little better than McLaughlin.
Yeah, they have 5D slated to come in and only 2 graduating. So Michigan State's got a pipeline issue of D maybe if they're trying to make room for Reed next year. We'll see what happens. I don't think all 5 of the D they have coming are going to make it if that's the case.
Yeah.
So
I was just curious because I thought I had remember either you or somebody else mentioned that, and he had a good tournament.
He had a good tournament. He's a player that's kind of popped up on the radar. Couldn't make a USHL team, and then now he's a great player in the CHL and developing.
And did his really kind of career, well, not career, but this tournament kind of popped when
Hudson got hurt. Yeah,
Hudson got hurt.
More opportunity for Reed. I mean, he was one guy who looked confident with the puck on his stick. For the, nobody else for the U.S. really elevated their game with the extra ice time available. And if anything, I saw Hensler play like 3-4 minutes a night sometimes. Just had his ice time reduced. So
yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. Mooney a little bit snake bit on the offensive end. He had quite a few chances, Viggs.
He sure did. I think there were a couple pipes or near pipes for him. I'm sure he had one where he had a pretty wide open net. I'm sure he wanted back, but
if
definitely a player who
saving it for the second half of the season, I am just fine with that.
And he should get a chance to be at the World Junior team next year. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like U.S. has a great team for next year as well.
Younger,
It could be one of those events where a lot of underagers make the roster for the U.S. Because if you looked at guys who were left off for this year who were young and would be, the older age group next year, they're not playing great. So we'll see if some of those U17s elevate.
I think Kvasnika is probably a lock next year.
Yeah, I think
he was kind of one of the last guys cut this year.
Mooney. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of gophers who could make it next year.
Yeah. So what else is going on? Had a good holidays with the family?
Yeah, good holidays. Stayed busy for most of it. So, when you've got 2 kids playing hockey, the winters are always busy. Holidays are not. So, and birthday was good. I got a little Dream Creamery burger and ice cream on my birthday, which was great. Had some nice bourbon. I've been very fortunate this last year of age with my trip to bourbon country. So I have a lot of tasty brown liquor bottles around. So life is good. Life is good.
That's
for me.
Fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was just doing nerd stuff most of the time.
Yeah, you are hard on the website here with all the updates. I got to do some work for the GPL. I got to get we got to get that project we talked about. Like, what is every coach's stance on postseason sites for the NCAA tournament on record? Because as we saw again, David Carl couldn't help himself over break. When the Oregon coach Lanning said, it's the only shame is we should be playing this game in Texas instead of the Orange Bowl or wherever they were playing it. I thought that was great. And I was like, I got to jump on this with Dave Carl. And then someone was criticizing attendance at the World Junior and said it's probably like people who want NCAA regionals in Minnesota. I was like, actually, we don't want regionals. We just want home campus sites, first round, second round. That's what we want. And if you look at MPI right now, you'd have Minnesota State going to Wisconsin, first round of the NCAA tournament. Don't change a thing, you two.
Okay, how about we do this? This summer, you and me, road trip to Denver. We'll get Carl. We're going to sit in Carl's backyard and do a podcast. from his backyard.
I want to go down to the coaching convention down in Naples, Florida, and set up a booth and be like, "Tell me why I'm wrong." And I want every
like that internet meme, right?
Yeah, tell me why I'm wrong. I'll give you a Busch Light pounder. We'll sit down. We'll talk it out. I need to know from every coach, all 63, why I'm wrong about the tournament.
Well,
on the record,
no argument here. No argument here.
Can we get a sponsor for that? Maybe the CBD company will have to.
Cascade. I'm looking forward to, Kingers is going to send it over some samples, folks.
Yep. Jeff Lavecchio, who does the hockey think tank, he does a lot of training out of St. Louis. He's a guy that says CBD's changed his life. He takes it every day. I know a couple trainers around here in the Twin Cities that highly recommend it for their patients, just to help with recovery. So I'm interested to try it out and see how it goes.
I've wanted to try it out as well for sleep. Just getting to sleep. But I also liked some of this Cascade stuff. It seems like, gosh, my knee is hurting, and they've got like topical creams, and they got that kind of stuff I could put. I'm like, that might be able to help me. So I need to start thinking about that more seriously myself.
There you go. Can't wait to share that with GPL Nation on this and see how it goes.
Yeah. What else is going on?
Yeah, let's see what other good stuff do we have going on. I think there's probably some coaching talk that's coming up as Bob's contract is running out of years. I think he's got 2 years left on his contract, so I think that's something that will be kind of an interesting point for Gopher fans to think about. They do have that recruiting class coming in 2 years that looks really good.
He's
be coaching the team.
Signed through 27-28. Yeah, you always put that link up on his profile. So on GPL, so 27-28 is his contract.
Yep. So that 27-28 year is a good roster if these players stick together. You could see LJ Mooney as a Hobie Baker candidate at that point. You could see all these young puck-moving defensemen joining the roster at that point. If you have big physical players like Rombach and Phillips to pair with them who are experienced, it could be pretty interesting at that stage.
Well, it's up to Bob, I think.
Sure.
if he wants to retire, good for him. If that ends up being the case next year, this year, whatever, I would like to see them go younger, Vigs. 35 to 50, maybe. I mean, somewhere just a little bit younger. Somebody who could come in and, and be here for 20 years before they want to retire. And maybe, we've seen with Carl that younger mind and the different way of doing things, keeping up with the times, that is more difficult for the older generation. It's borderline, us. I'm 53 now. And I'm looking for a coach that's younger than me. I think that's not a bad idea.
Well, and I think the next era of college hockey is going to be this NIL CEO GM type era. It's not going to be the old school. This is my way. This is our program. Take it or leave it. It's going to be a little different. And, a younger coach who's ready for that will be a quality that you have to evaluate and hope you pick the right one. It'll certainly be a job that's attractive to a lot of candidates. We've seen a lot of programs lately announce early that their coach is going to step away and they'll name a successor. I don't know if Minnesota is a program that will end up doing something like that publicly, because they're not going to just hire a coach from like the USHL or CHL. They're probably going to get like an established.
Yeah, you can't. And most likely, like you said, someone established, they're working. They've got a season. They've got and even like they might think that, hey, I might want that job, but keep me in mind. I have a job to do right now.
Mm-hmm. So candidates you look at that year in waiting, I don't think is something that would fit Minnesota. But
look at Reboyne. He left a full year before the program even started. So he was allowed to build that program kind of from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a full year to get it going as well. I thought that was a good choice by him. He could have stayed another year here and got more experience first, probably still have gotten a job. But he took that year off to think about what he was going to do and how he was going to build it.
Well, I think recruiting and scouting was the biggest thing. And look at the season Augustana is having right now.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a really nice job there. And he's probably a name that you can't dismiss as someone who, if he has a successful season here with Augustana and gets them in the tournament, that's something Grant Potolny wasn't able to do at Northern Michigan.
Oh, what a program that's just fallen. What, they have one win on the season?
Well, I mean, for them to lose him as a coach and lose all their recruits that they had lined up, that's just a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Although on the flip side, in this era, when you can pick from 300 CHL and U Sport players in the transfer portal, it's never been easier to rebuild a roster and make it competitive quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of interesting things are going to happen here, Viggs. We'll just wait and see.
For sure.
Who knows? Let's get through this season first and see where we get. And maybe this team can make a run. I know I'd like to see that. If they could even make a little run and just sneak in the tournament, I think that would be a real positive right now. Or or lose the Big Ten championship or something like that. We're like, hey, they were that close. I think kind of the goal right now is we really just need to improve this team, whether if we get anywhere or not in the postseason this year.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to find out what you have with some of your players. And, they were able to plug some holes in the portal with DePasquale and Ludke and getting Pritchard late to supplement their forwards. Are there more guys that they need to be adding next year as they're waiting for that recruiting class that will come in 2 years? You definitely don't want to block out roster spots for those guys by going into the CHL too much. Because if you look at some of these programs that have dipped heavy in the CHL, the downside of that is I don't think those players are going to be 3 and 4 year players.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not ready, those are guys that probably aren't going to stick around and pass up going to the AHL even. If they get offered a pro contract, historically, those players are already gone anyway to the AHL. So I just wonder what's going to happen with these schools like Michigan State and Penn State and Michigan and North Dakota as they dip so heavy into the CHL and leave early. Because as we've seen, it's really hard to win with freshmen and sophomores unless you have a crew of seniors and juniors that can protect them and shelter them. I think Schlossman has made it clear the last team to win the NCAA tournament with a first-round pick. Is it still North Dakota?
Yeah, something like that.
That's crazy to me. Obviously the Gophers should have won in Tampa, not to go there again. But
yeah, you did.
but they didn't.
No.
And one of the reasons they didn't is because young players like Logan Cooley and Jimmy Snuggerud didn't come through in that third period when maybe you needed them to. And maybe if they're on different lines and they are surrounded by seniors, it's an easier path for them to make impacts in those games. But it was Matthew Nyes just creating chance after chance for them. If there's one more upperclassman that plays with them and they've got multiple lines, it's a lot easier.
Myers.
Yeah,
I think Myers
would have stuck around. Yeah.
I think Myers would have stuck around. I think they have a 6th national title because senior leadership, smart player,
heavy player, puck protection,
and really
possession game.
Yes, it really cup of coffee in the NHL. I think it would have
I
been.
think he just
so
scored for
huge.
Seattle this last week, though.
Oh,
So
yeah, okay, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. But
I
those are the
bet-
kind of players that win titles.
That is the exact kind of player. That's, you look at Jordan Leopold coming back his senior year, not going to the NHL, win a title. And it's because of his leadership, his skill went up another level. Myers would have been so huge on that team. I think they would have taken home the title.
And I just think of roster building, there's so many unknowns with the CHL stuff going on right now. And you have to have that leadership and those players that understand that puck possession and positive shifts and putting shifts together is just as important as the flashy plays and capitalizing in transition and creating offense. It's more about capitalizing on the chances when they're there than just creating them out of thin space all the time. And that's a learned habit. That's not something many players understand. And I think that cost every team at the World Juniors except for Sweden. Sweden was one of the few teams that didn't chase offense. Like they just capitalized on it when it was there and relied on their power play to help them out throughout the tournament. So
we'll see. Big weekend this week. Big weekend. Big month. Gosh, big rest of the season. Oh no. Stevie. I don't know. I think DePasquale a little more than Ari. That's just my personal opinion. And now watch, Ari will just take off. That would be great. I'd love to see either of them take off.
Ari is that more technical goalie. If you're scouting goalies, he's got a lot of the qualities you like. But I think Luka has maybe more feel for the game. As we've seen in the past with college goalies, sometimes that feel for the game outweighs the technical ability.
I don't know. I just feel like there's a better chance of him making that one save that you need to have to win the game. And that's maybe because, like you said, the style. He might give up some stuff, but you know what? Man, he's gonna bail you out. And when it comes crunch time, you need that kind of goalie that's gonna be that last line of defense and bail you out when a puck comes over and there's nobody covering a guy and he just makes a great save.
And it's the goalie reading the game and anticipating and knowing what the other team wants to do. That's that quality that you really look for. And especially if you have a defense that you can count on, you can be more aggressive as a goalie. And I think that's been hard for Minnesota in the first half as they've got so much inexperience on the blue line that maybe the goalies haven't been able to trust their reads as much. Maybe that changes in the second half. Maybe they play more consistent in front of him and you can be a more aggressive tender. And I think Luka's been that a little bit more over the past, but Ari is a great technical goalie. He's got a lot of things that you like. Yeah. He's big. He's been better with his crease control this year and his rebound control. You're just looking for that one extra save a game, especially on the PK.
Yeah. You're not wrong. And maybe it's even a confidence thing. He makes a couple big saves out of nowhere. That could do a lot to your confidence.
So. They've got options. Like I think both goalies have good qualities.
We just need a number one. We're gonna need a number one eventually, if they want to succeed and whatever.
I knew the USA World Junior team was in a little bit of trouble when I asked Bob after one of the games. He's like, "How do you evaluate the strengths of your goaltenders and manage that going forward?" And he goes, "Well, we might have to do it by committee this year." And I just go, "Ooh, that is a tough situation to be in as a coach, knowing that you're not confident you're going to get a number one." I think he feels like one of these guys could be a number one. So,
sorry, Augustine can't come back for a third year. What do you do? All right, Viggs, I'm tired. It was a late show. Don't want to go on too long, so I'm going to say goodnight.
I wanted to do it for the listeners a little bit, so I had a beer to drink. So
Of course. Well, you got to have your beer.
Mhm.
God, remember an overtime used to last like 10 or 15 minutes? It used to back in the old days. It just got long. Then they got super long, and then
got super long during COVID.
Come down since then. So
yeah, we got to find that happy medium.
yeah, we do. And it depends on how late we are and how tired we are. And I didn't get much sleep last night, so I'm tired.
We got to get that Cascade CBX in your system.
Oh man, I do. Anything for sleep. That's what I need. So
or better food from Cub Foods.
Stop teasing me. I'm hungry.
I had a beef stroganoff this week. That was so good.
Oh, mushrooms in there, definitely, right?
Mushrooms.
Oh.
I use creme fraiche instead of sour cream, and then a little bit of heavy cream as well.
I like that. I'm not a sour cream person, so I think I'd probably really like that.
Creme fraiche is the way to go. So
there you go.
Highly recommended this time of year.
All right, we're gonna say goodnight, folks. We'll catch you next week. Hi. Moscow situation. That could get interesting.
And I did see Mark Hoyle at practice a couple weeks ago. Don't see that